we say Muksa Machmas Isser, Rashi's Kiddush, we only say it when there's an Isser Deraisa.
Yeah.
That's for the most part what we did, and then we also spoke a little bit about Shitas Rabbi Meir and Avir Delivni. Okay. So we're going to try to start the new Mishnah, not completely new. It is an ancient Mishnah written hundreds, thousands of years ago, but for us it's a bit new in that we haven't done it before. On Daf Lamed Beis, Amud Aleph, Leiv, in Maseches Beitsa, and we're still very much involved with, in Maseches Beitsa, all the very small details of how we keep Yom Tov in the Jewish nation. And once we learn it, we can hopefully see how it applies back to the previous Mishnah. Okay. Who would like to read the new Mishnah?
I could read. Ein Poichsim is Haner. Poichsim cannot put out the candle.
Poches.
Make less.
How would you make it less?
To lower the flame.
No. By the way, what is a nair?
There is a candle.
Not like you and I normally think of a nair. It's more like on Hanukkah. Have you ever lit?
A flame.
No. What you know the apparatus that's used to light on Hanukkah? You use candles on Hanukkah or oil?
Candles.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you may not be as familiar with this as I wished. Those who use oil, right, it's set up with a container that holds the oil, then some kind of an apparatus for holding a wick up, right, that's partially submerged into the oil, so it can draw from the oil, or partially up and out of the oil so that the flame can be unencumbered, right? So you have this whole setup, right? But part of it is relying on the fact that you have a container that's somewhat deep that can contain enough oil to fuel the fire for a number of hours.
So it's a container basically.
It's basically a container which holds in it the apparatus for lighting a flame, which is riding on top of all of that. That might be why we talk about Ner Mitzvah Torah Or, because you have Ner and then you have the Or. The Or is that flame that's lit on top, which I think was what you thought of when you thought of a Ner, of that actual flame. The actual word for flame is Shalhevet. Right? That's the name for a flame. Or sometimes you talk about Lahav. For example, when they get kicked out of Gan Eden, Adam and Chava get kicked out of Gan Eden.
So this is a flame, right?
Yeah. It's sometimes shortened just to be the word Lahav. You know where you find the word Lahav? In the story about Adam and Chava being kicked out of Gan Eden. Are you familiar with that story?
The flame of soul, right?
That's right. It's called Lahav Cherev Amisapeches. The flame of the sword that turns around. Obviously not a normal sword that we're used to, some kind of a spiritual sword perhaps. But it's a flame of sorts. That's why it keeps going like all around, like a flame, it can move. Something about the protection of not going back into Gan Eden is compared to a Lahav Cherev Amisapeches. That's a Lahav. That's not what Ner is, right? So that even though we tend to call the whole thing a Ner, so we just think it's part of it is the flame, but that's not really true. The Ner is actually the container that holds within it the oil. So it's a bit like a cup.
Yeah.
And in the olden days, one of the more common ways of doing it is to have it made out of earthenware or pottery. Right? You know how pottery is made?
ceramics, I think. Clay, right?
Clay, right. So it's basically like mud, a certain type of mud that has to be moist to shape it properly. Okay?
Yeah.
So apparently, and then what makes it into actual pottery? The difference between clay and pottery is that clay is when it's still basically like the raw material, moist, very moist. And pottery, the way they used to do it was they would take it and put it in a kiln. You know what a kiln is? Not the thing that the Scotsmans wear. That's a kilt. A kiln. It's basically kind of an oven for reaching very, very high temperatures that you put the pottery in there, which is basically like wet clay, and it heats it up to a point where it gets very, very hot, almost like the matzahs. You put in this raw dough, disgusting looking stuff, and then it turns into this beautiful golden matzah in a very, very hot oven. Right? In a way, that's what a kiln is. Okay, today there's much more sophisticated types of apparatus. That's the idea. They put it in these high temperatures, it dries it out, but in a way that doesn't make it brittle, it actually strengthens the pottery. Makes it very strong. Obviously there's tricks of how to keep it from breaking, etc., but that's the idea. So our Mishnah is basically talking about, assuming you know that process. So now that you know that process, this Mishnah can make a little bit more sense to you, in my opinion.
We're making something hard rather than completing something.
But that's the final step, but I'm talking about a much earlier step is what we're talking about here. Pochasin would mean, therefore, I have something and I'm taking away part of it, making it less, pachot. Okay? So I think we can see the Rashi now, and the Rashi will hopefully make a bit of sense based on what I just said. Let's see the Rashi.
So read it.
I'd like to see Shabbatai reading a bit here.
Where is it?
And I'd really know he's here and not in the hospital still.
Where is it? Yeah.
The aim focusing is in there, it's a Mishnah. It's not
Have you seen the Mishnah?
Yeah.
Okay, now Rashi on the Mishnah usually starts with the same four letters. Mem, Taf, Nun, Yud with an apostrophe over the Yud. You find that in Rashi anywhere? A very much larger Mem, Taf, Nun, Yud than the rest of the letters. Sort of sticks out, very bold.
Oh, yeah. Mishnah. Eén portgin is dan portin. You don't, I guess, carve out, make less.
Very good, very good.
And,
Now Shabbatai got us one step closer. He used another verb here, carve out. That's exactly how Rashi says. Very good.
The Torah means to take, carve out, right?
It means to make it less, but the way you make it less is by carving it out. Rashi actually speaks it out now, so let's see the Rashi, let him do the talking.
Little echad min Beitsa.
Two more words.
Shel Otze.
Yotzer.
Shel Yotze.
Okay.
Little.
Litol,
To
like
pick up.
to take.
To take one.
No.
To take. Is that achad?
Oh, you're right.
You take one min ha Beitsim from an egg. Shel ha Yotze.
Right. Now, a Yotzer,
It's a
we know what the word
manufacturer.
what?
Manufacturer.
Good. And if we're talking about a ner, that means somebody who makes a ner. But the real, I think Yotzer, you know where you find this?
Yetzira.
Huh?
It's an oil
Yetzira.
pressure.
No, that there is the word Yotzer.
Formation.
We use it in a number of places for creating something. But it's a lower form of creation, more a physical forming, forming, right? Like the word Yetzirah is like a formation. Yetzer. Why do we call our Yetzer Hara Yetzer Hara? Why do we call him a Yetzer Hara? What do you say? That's really. What?
Because it's forming new ideas in our head.
He forms ideas and images, actually. He forms images. When he wants you to do an Avera, he makes this image in your mind of what you're going to gain from the Avera, and he makes it look very wonderful. Right? It's like you have a picture of a ice cream in your mind. You know, he's the one who puts that picture in your mind. So it's creating an image. Okay. Okay. So here it's a physical creation. Now the person who's physically creating something in this process that we're talking about, creating a nair, okay, in this case, he's really a potter, the potter, okay?
Yeah.
He's forming pottery, so we call it in English a potter, right?
Yeah.
Not Harry Potter. A potter, right? Who makes pottery?
It's my son's name.
Huh?
It's my son's nickname. Potter.
Okay. I won't ask too much about that. No. So the point being that, you know where we actually use that expression for Yotzer when we're talking about someone who creates pottery? You know where in the liturgy of Judaism that we talk about that? Yom Kippur. Very good. That famous poem we say, Kihine, right? We say we're just like this thing that's in the hands of this person, or we're just like, meaning we're completely in Hashem's hands, and He can do whatever He wants with it. Just like a potter takes a piece of clay and he does whatever he wants with it. He can smash it, he can destroy it, he can formulate it. That's what we're trying to say in that piyut. So that's right, very good. That's what I was thinking. So that's one place where we see the word Yotzer, and the Chazal use the word Yotzer to talk about a potter. So because that's what he does. He creates and forms shapes and different things with the clay. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to say over here is like this. He's trying to create, let's say, a very provisional menorah. Okay. But not like in the Beitsa where it was made out of gold and had all these beautiful, precious arms just all coming out of a central thing like we learned in this week's Parsha. No. Here it's like you add on this little piece and that little piece and you create like a candelabra of sorts. So one of the things that you're adding on is what he's calling a Beitsa. Okay, because that's how a potter starts the process. He takes a Beitsa. Now, not a Beitsa of what you and I call a Beitsa, but something that looks a little bit like a Beitsa. So he's called, nicknamed a Beitsa. What do you think it's made out of, this Beitsa? Clay. So it's a little ball of clay. Okay? So if you've ever tried your hand at pottery, you know that's what you do. You take a glob of clay and you start formulating it. The first thing you do is try to make it round. Right? It shouldn't be just a regular shape. Once it's round, then you can work it into something else. Okay? So, I believe that's the process that Rashi's alluding to here. So what would you want to do? Litol echad min habeitzim shel yotzer, to do what? What does Rashi said in the first part of the sentence now, according to our new knowledge?
To take out a ball from the ball of clay, take out a piece.
That's right, a piece of clay, which is in the form of an egg, like a form of a small ball. And do what then?
Potter it, to mold it.
Rashi says, keep going.
Tachuv.
Litchov.
Litchov.
You know what that means? Litchov, tochev, tichiva. It's actually sometimes used in sewing, if I'm not mistaken. When you stitch, you insert the needle and then you take it out again. So in certain times when we're describing that process, we talk about tichiva, an insertion. So Rashi says, what would we do when we had that glob of clay in our hand? We might want to litchov egrofo. A lot of new words here today.
Grova means a
Just a second. What?
means a thumb or something?
No, that's an egodel. An egrof is the camera on?
Yeah, but it went down.
I did.
Went.
Next time you really have to try harder. Okay, egrof is what? The entire fist.
What? A fist? Yeah.
In fact, I don't know about modern Hebrew when they really are talking about boxing, but I think it is one of the euphemisms of boxing is egrofim, fists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What were we doing? We were playing fists. We're boxing.
Mm.
So Rashi is saying, once I have this glob of clay, what might I do? Litchov egrofo. To
Take a
what did I say litchov was?
to stitch.
Yeah, it's used in the stitching process, but it really means to insert. In the stitching process, you take the needle and you insert it into the fabric, and then you bring it out again. That insertion is called a litchov, a tchiva, a stitch.
So
But the truth is, litchov really means to insert.
you insert this into a fist.
To insert one's fist.
Are you insert one's fist into this or this into one's fist?
Well, let's see how it progresses. The first two words, litchov egrofo, is to insert one's fist. Where is he inserting it?
Betocho, in it.
Into its midst.
Right.
Into what's midst? The
The-
midst of the
into the midst of the clay.
of the clay. This little ball of clay that he was holding in the other
Oh,
hand.
So it's into it, right?
Into its midst. Inside of it. So let's say this would be a glob of clay, and I wanted to make it a container instead of just a glob. I push my fist into it, and what ends up happening when I take my fist out? What have I created?
You've got a shape of a fist. A container.
But not.
A container.
I'm not trying. It's not like Hollywood's the pavement. You know, where you're trying to leave your
A star, isn't it?
for all of eternity. We're going to see Shabbatized fist in there. No, we're not making an imprint. We're trying to create a what?
Container.
A container, a receptacle, right? To make it concave, as they say. That's the first step towards creating. It's like, you know what a cave is?
Yeah.
When you make something of that shape, it's called concave.
Round, right?
No, not necessarily round. It's that, as opposed to if I push something out, it's not concave. But if I push something in, it has now an internal receptacle. It's like a cave. It's like a small little case. We call it concave. Anyhow, okay, that's really a receptacle. You're creating a receptacle. Which, if you're trying to create a cup, mazel tov, now you've at least started off the cup. If you're trying to create what we call a candelabra for lighting candles, in the ancient sense, you want a receptacle to hold the shemen.
What's that, Mr. Drake?
I have something, but
Should we about some of this?
just turn off the camera for a minute, please.
That you should worry about the coffin that they take you away to shoot.
Better cough and cough in. Okay, so basically Rashi's taking us on a bit of a journey through the process of how they used to make probably a lot of things, but at least in terms of the nair, what we call nair, the container that holds the shemen. It starts out on a very crude way, just a glob of clay, which Rosh is calling a Beitsa. Somehow resembles a Beitsa. And then the next step, if you want to create a container, is to insert your fist into the midst of that. And probably you could do it with anything. Just insert any largish type of object into it, it will create a concave container. Okay, so that's basically everything we're saying now is the normal process, and that's what the Mishnah is saying we don't do on Yom Tov. And that's what the Mishnah means when it says we're not poches. Because by doing this action, in a sense, we're taking away from that clay, right? By sort of creating a hollow inside to create the container. I think that's shot. So let's read the Rashi again. Ein pochsin es haner. We don't diminish the nair. What does that mean? We don't diminish the nair. It's not talking about the finished product, but rather the very crude first step of creating it. What would we want to do that the Mishnah is telling us we can't do? Litol echad min habeitzim, to take one of these globs of clay that is used by whom? Shel yotzer, by the potter. And then what would we normally do as the next step after we had the glob in our hand? We'd litcho vegrofo l'socho. We push into it our fist.
Certain of this, right?
Yeah.
The kok, net is to groove or to carve.
To hollow out, right, to carve out.
The nair is
Nair.
something French, but Lozi.
That's right.
What are they? What is that?
Croisel
The croisel.
in Old French.
Mitnei she'asekli.
She'osekli.
To make a kli.
So now Rashi's going to the reason why it's usher. Why is it usher? Mipnei she'osekli. Because to do so would be called
Making a vessel.
making a vessel. Because before that, it's not a vessel. A glob of clay is not a vessel. Okay? But once I push my fist into it, it's not a final product. How do I make a final product? What would be the final step of making this into a proper vessel?
To kiln it, to burn it.
Right, to fire it up in the kiln, as they say. I know my brother and my mother used to be into pottery, so I heard a lot of these expressions. Fire it up in the kiln. Okay, so basically you put in the hot oven, a special oven designed for firing up clay and turning it into pottery. That would be the real final step. Okay, so it could be argued, there could have been an argument theoretically. In other words, let's put it this way. What's the chiddush? Of course I can't do this. Why does the Mishnah have to tell me I can't do this? Of course I can't do this. Why would I think I could do this? Why would I think I could do this? Why does this Mishnah have to tell me, don't do this, don't go take a raw clay and put your fist in it and make it into a container? Why would the Mishnah have to tell me? It's that, right? Obviously, when it's telling me not to do something, it's because I would have thought I could do it.
Maybe with the Rashi you could do this.
Okay, because bidder rice, so there's no issur of making a kli.
Making it clay, but it's not permanent, right?
When is it permanent?
Because like solid.
So what makes it permanent? What would make it permanent?
Burn it if you...
To fire it up in the kiln would make it permanent, right? So maybe...
Make it hot substance.
Okay, so before the kiln, one could argue that what? That it should be mutter
Temporary.
because it's temporary, and also you could say it's not even a kli yet. Most people wouldn't use it when it's just a piece of clay, even if it now is in the shape of a nair. You don't do that. You don't use wet clay to on Hanukkah, go out and look at your neighbors if anyone use wet clay. Nobody's using wet clay, right? Maybe they're using regular clay that's been fired up into a pottery type of thing. Nobody's going to use wet clay. Wet clay is not yet a kli. One could have argued it's not yet a kli. It's in the shape that it's going to be in, but it's not the final product yet. You know where we find this kind of thinking in Hilchos Tsuma and Torah, although it's been a while since we've delved into those kind of halachas. But if you ever had experience with that or learned some of the mishnayos involved in, when is a kli makabel tuma and it's a finished product? Before it's a finished product, it's not makabel tuma. So this becomes a very big question in Hilchos Tsuma. When is it called a finished product? And Maseches Kelim, which is all about different kinds of kalim, is all about that. Like, this particular kli, when are you going to call it a finished product? Well, maybe at this point. No, he doesn't really want to use it at that point. Most people would wait till a later point in the process. So in Hilchos Tumah, definitely we're familiar with this thought process, that when do you call it a final product? Then we'll talk about it being Makabel Tumah. Before then it's not Makabel Tumah. And then you have lots of gray area in the middle, that some people would use it at this point, or he thought to use it at this point. Sometimes that's true. We say, I know there's a case that's brought down about a piece of leather. He starts to trim it off, and usually they do a lot more till it's a final product, like a shoe or something. But sometimes they stop in the middle and they say, oh, it's a nice little round piece of leather, I'm going to use it as a placemat. But if it's all jagged, they wouldn't use it. So as soon as you trim it, then there's a question, do you want to use it now as a table mat, as like a placemat, or not? So sometimes it depends on your thoughts. Are you ready to use it at that point? Are you not going to use it at that point? Would normal people use it at this point? Normal people wouldn't use it yet. So that's in Hilchos Tumah and Tara. But I would have said, possibly here, we would have said the same thing. Why am I not allowed to do it? Because you said I made a kli. I didn't make a kli. If it's not a finished product, I didn't make a kli. I made like a prototype or something. Something that could eventually be a kli. Sorry, what were you saying?
This Yontov that they're talking about, could this be Hanukkah?
No, this is Maseches Yom Tov. All the halachas of first day of Pesach, last day of Pesach, Shavuos, first day of Sukkot, last day of Sukkot.
So why? Well, then we're not allowed to do that.
Why? Why do you know?
Because it's not Ochel Nefesh. It's nothing to do with Ochel Nefesh.
Okay, that's a good point.
So
Is that considered? Is lighting a candle Ochel Nefesh? Remember, we had a case where people don't like to eat in the dark. So would I be allowed to light a candle on Yom Tov in order to eat? Not to eat in the dark. I think we do say that. I think that's considered Ochel Nefesh, to create a place that has this lit up. Putting a fire out, we said, is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, we've had that.
But lighting a candle, I think it's called Ochel Nefesh. One of the things we do an eruv, right? We do eruv. Yeah, eruv tafshilin is to light a candle, to be able to light a candle. So it's considered a need of Yom Tov, is lighting a candle.
That's before you.
Yeah, but you're doing something that's on Yom Tov for Shabbos. If it's not mutter on Yom Tov, you can't do it. It has to be something you're allowed to do. So I'm allowed to light a candle on Yom Tov. Why? Because it's considered a Ochel Nefesh. Anyhow.
This is not Ochel Nefesh, what are you using this for?
I assume he needs a candle to eat his meal by. Right? This is how they make a small container, they put oil in it, they put a wick in it. That's how they light a candle. They didn't have a big box of wax candles on the windowsill. And most of the things they did in their day was very much oil, dependent on oil. Right? In any event, okay. But, so it could be either one of those would be the Havamina. Maybe it's called Ochel Nefesh, so maybe I would be allowed. Or maybe it's not Ochel Nefesh, because it's too many steps removed, right? I'm not lighting a fire. I'm creating a kli, and then I want to put in the oil, and put in the wick, and the light, and then, it's too many steps removed.
Is that called
Hechsher. Machshiri Ochel Nefesh. So that could be a reason also why it wouldn't be necessarily Ochel Nefesh. But my Havamina was, which I think we're going to see later in the Mishnah, this will be borne out, possibly, that this could be argued is not really called, what Rashi just said, it's called making a kli. And I was arguing before that maybe it's not called making a kli. Why is this not making a kli? Because it's not a finished product. Nobody would use it in this raw form. It's a wet piece of clay. Yes, it's formed into a cup of sorts, but nobody would use this. So how can you say I made a kli? I didn't make a kli. It's not a kli yet. Not a finished product. So that could be argued that, okay, then I'm allowed to do it. Because I didn't really make a kli. I didn't do what the Isser is apparently making a kli. Okay, anyhow, that would be my possible interpretation. Let's go back to the Mishnah now and try to work it out
So
again.
it's not a permanent thing, it's a temporary.
That's your shot was that it's not permanent. It's not permanent. I'm saying a slightly different shot. It's not a finished product.
Not a finished product.
Okay, I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just saying in these preliminary stages of learning a Mishnah or learning a Gemora, it's good to get a few thoughts out there. And then as you go through, you start to see one of them makes more sense than the other. So maybe your pshat is correct, it's not permanent. Maybe my pshat because it's not a finished product. Maybe the third pshat because it's not considered oichel nefesh. Right? Or when we were trying to think of why it might have been mutter, it might have been mutter because maybe it is considered oichel nefesh. Right? So all those things are actually not true according to the Tanakhama at least. No, it's still usher because it's called making a kli. Rashi says it was called making a kli. That's the last few words in Rashi to explain why it's usher. Neshu oseh kli. According to the Tanakhama, at least, this is called, you made a kli. Temporary, permanent, finished product. According to Tanakhama, I don't care. Before now, it was just a glob of clay, and now you did something that makes it a utensil that you can actually use. You just made a kli. And for Yom Tov, that would be usher. Okay? That's what we see so far in the Tanakhama. And it's actually not just Rashi, it's actually the Gemora, the Mishnah. Let's see the Mishnah. Ein pochasin is an air.
Shall we read the next one?
Let's read the Mishnah again. Let's go back to the Mishnah that we have.
One cannot grab,
Hollow out
the
the clay to make it into an air.
Who is making a vessel?
Right, so the last few words in Rashi are actually the words in the Mishnah. So Rashi often does that, by the way. He takes the words of the Mishnah or the Gemora, then he goes off on his own little tangent to explain it, and then he goes back into the words. He leads you back into the words. So it's not just Rashi that's saying that the Isser is because he made it kli, it's the actual Mishnah. The Tanakhama is saying very clearly, don't do that because I consider that making a kli. Sorry. Okay, next. Right? That was just one line of Mishnah.
Yeah. Ein oisim pachmin b'yom tov. Pachmin shel b'yom tov.
You know, refine this in b'men madlikin.
Chamim means something to do.
No. Do you have a siddur that has b'men madlikin in it?
I do, at home.
Oh. Well, we need one here. Let's see if one of these ones has it.
What were you looking at? Pachmin?
Yeah, you know what that word means? Okay, that's honest of you. Let's see if this one has it. Here we go, remember Lincoln. Oh, here we go. Hamachabes haner mipnei shuhu misyari mipnei goyim mipnei listim mipnei brach ra. Familiar?
Yeah.
O bishvil achol sheyishan pater. Kichas halaner, kichas halashemen, kichas halapsila chayiv. Rabbi Yossi poter bechulan chutz min ha pasila mipnei she'osa pecham. Okay, so it's mission number 5.
Charcoal.
Very good.
It's cold.
What does it mean in that context?
It's like because it makes it into charcoal.
Makes what?
Makes a wick.
Okay, it's not the normal charcoal that we're used to seeing. Charcoal is a big chunk of something, just a little wick. So where's the charcoal? What do you do Erev Shabbos to prepare the candles for your wife?
Blacken the edge.
You call that blackening. I could take out some paint and blacken it. It's not.
No, you burn it.
You're charring.
Char.
You're charring. You're making it into a
Charcoal.
pecham.
Oh,
Last word in the Mishnah. Show Shabbatai. He says that's a tikkun. Rabbi Yossi says you're not allowed to do it. Hamechabes haner or blah blah blah. Right? So what's it talking about in that part of the Mishnah? Doing what? What's he's saying? Don't do something because it makes it.
Except for the wick, you can burn the edge of the wick and turn it into.
No, you can't.
You can't.
It says chayiv. It's chayiv. He's poter bekulan. If you do it on Shabbos, he's poter on all of the other things that were mentioned above,
Okay.
except for this one.
Okay.
This one will be chayiv.
Right.
Deraisa, chayiv chatos, chayiv skila, chayiv kores. And you just said it's mutter.
Yeah. Okay.
What's he saying? The previous things were asur, according to the first Tana there, because you're creating something. And he says, no, he's poter bekulan. He says it's not creative enough to be chayiv on Shabbos. Chutz min hapsila, except for if you do singe the wick,
Right.
then even according to Rabbi Yossi, it's what?
Making charcoal.
It's chayiv. Chutz mean this means except for that one, meaning except for that one is chayiv. Then he's going to be moded to the Tana Kama. The Tana before Rabbi Yossi was saying chayiv on all these things. Right?
Yeah.
Kichas al aner, kichas al psil, kichas al whatever. What does the Tana Kama say? Chayiv.
Is liable. Rabbi Yosef Potter.
Poter bekulan chutz.
Chutz min
Basila.
Sila mipnei shavu sin
Pecham. Now we could say we've seen the word pechamim. Where have we seen the word pechamim?
From Mishnah and Shabbos.
Which parak?
First parak.
Second parak. B'mem adlikin. Which Mishnah?
Hamish.
First Mishnah.
And who mentioned it?
Rabbi Yossi.
And what is he saying? Because of the pecham or the pechamim, what does he feel happened because of that?
Making charcoal.
What happens? Therefore,
Chayiv.
person would be chayiv on Shabbos for having done a malacha. What malacha?
Tikkun.
Making charcoal.
He's creating.
Why would you do this on Shabbos?
Why would you do it on Erev Shabbos?
Well, to make
You just told me you do it on Erev
to
Shabbos.
make it easier to light.
Okay?
Yeah.
So you're taking a wick that doesn't work that well,
Right.
doesn't wick that well, and now you're making it
Wickable.
proper.
Wickable.
Right.
So you
It's
don't
a
have
quick
to do
wick.
that? You don't have to do that?
Not on Shabbos.
No. On Shabbos you're not allowed to fly anyway. You can't do any of that on Shabbos.
But it's saying you wouldn't be chayiv according to Rabbi Yossi. In many cases, you wouldn't be chayiv because you're not really making a proper tikkun. When you burn something, you're not making a tikkun. If I'm only being mekalkel, we have a rule: kol mekalkelim peturim.
Mm-hmm.
People who destroy things on Shabbos are patur. Only, right? That's what we learn on this week's parsha, Vayakel. Moshe comes down from the mountain and says, we have a very special project called the Mishkan. But I just want to remind you, we're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. What do we learn from that?
Mishkan.
What do we learn from that juxtaposition?
39.
That anything that would be going into creatively making the Mishkan is what is Asur on Shabbos, Chayav on Shabbos. That's where we learn the 39 Malachas. Okay? But the principle is that it has to be a creative act.
Not destructive.
Right. Anything that was used to create the Mishkan is by definition a creative act. Because why would they have done it in creating the Mishkan? Obviously because it's creating a Mishkan. If it doesn't create, if it just destroys, then it's actually patur. That's what there's an expression in Maseches Shabbos, kol hamakalkalin. Anyone who actually destroys something is paturim, is patur, at least midaraisa is patur. Probably even mutter. Okay? So that's what Rabbi Yossi says. All the other three there that the Tanna Kama mentioned are patur. Because it's mekalkal. Chutz min apsila ibnei shehu zeh pecham. Except by the wick, there he's actually creating something positive. What's he creating positive? That little piece of charcoal at the end of the wick. What's so special about that little charred piece of wick? Now it'll light really quickly, right? Those kind of wicks are important. That's why the husband does it every hour of Shabbos. So when the wife comes to light, it goes like that. Okay? So let's go back to our Rashi now and see if this helps us. And not feel like we've never seen this word before. Do we have enough here? Did it charge properly?
Yeah. Yeah, it should be good for now.
Alright. Let's try it once more. Ve'ein Osin, second halacha in the Mishnah. Ein Osin, we don't make Pechamim B'Yom Tov. Where have we seen this word Pechamim before? We saw it in the 5th Mishnah, in the 2nd parak of Shabbos called Meh Madlikin. Rabbi Yossi said, he feels a person's chayiv on Shabbos if he does make a pecham.
Yes.
So what's it saying in our Mishnah? Ein osin pechamim b'yom tov. We're not allowed to
make charcoal.
And what do you think it's talking about?
The wick.
Perhaps it's talking like in the 5th Mishnah, in the 2nd parak in Shabbos. They're talking about singeing the wick to make it work better, to make it wick better. So why are we not allowed to do that in Yom Tov?
Because you're making a kli.
You're making a kli, not exactly the full kli, but we're perfecting the kli, right? A wick that's singed is a much better kli, to the point where Rabbi Yossi said it's chayiv on Shabbos, because he did something so positive there. Okay, so it seems that our Mishnah is saying, and you might think that it's mutter to do that on Yom Tov. Why would you think it's mutter to do it on Yom Tov? Because it's helping me light a candle. Am I allowed to light a candle on Yom Tov?
Yes.
Yes. I hope you don't have to think about it next time. Yes.
Yes.
I told you a proof of that. What's the proof? One of the things you make an Erev Tavshilin for is to be able to
cook,
light Shabbos candles. Have you ever said the wording of Erev Tavshilin? Have you ever made an Erev Tavshilin?
I have.
Well, I hope you knew what you were saying. If you didn't know what you were saying, you were just saying a ritual bunch of words, mumbo jumbo, then it didn't work, by the way. You have to really know what you're saying.
This pure Pesach, the last day is in the Erev Tavshilin.
Then you better know it by then. So one of the things you say, I'm doing this in order to cook and to bake and to do all the tzrachim of Shabbos and even to light the candles. Okay? Ladluke shraga. Shraga means a candle. Okay? But we're saying now you can't perfect the wick. Well, why not? I'm allowed to light a candle. The answer is, this is like we said before. This is not a direct lighting of the candle. It's a little bit like the first halacha. Am I lighting a candle? No. I'm doing what? What's it called? Shabbatai?
Kachmin.
No, but we said before, when I wanted to create the ner, in the first halacha we said no, because it's not ochel nefesh, it's machshirei ochel nefesh.
That's the focus by Tsama, by Hillel, whether they is considered ochel nefesh or not.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but it's possible you're right. Then it will turn out that Beis Hillel is what, machmir or mekel?
Mekel.
So we should be able to do makshiri.
Yeah.
So then it would be a question, why can't we do this? This is a makshiri.
Yeah.
I am maintaining, which you guys can argue about, and if you come tomorrow armed with some proof against me, I'll have to accept it, that lighting a candle on Yom Tov is called ochel nefesh.
It's not Beis Hillel.
No, because everyone says you're allowed to light a candle on Yom Tov.
Just go put it out.
Are you allowed to, according to Beis Shammai, you're not allowed to light a candle on Yom Tov?
You are.
Then it's not a question. The question would be, what about singeing the wick so that when I light the candle, it lights much more quickly?
It's Machshirah.
It's makshiri ochel nefesh. So if you say Beis Hillel lets you do makshiri ochel nefesh, so why can't I do it here? It says ein osim pechamim b'yom tov. I would have thought it's mutter to those who say makshiri ochel nefesh is mutter. Maybe not every makshiri ochel nefesh is mutter, or maybe this is going according to Mandomer and says makshiri ochel nefesh is asur. But I would think, and maybe the reason why this is worse is because you're making a kli. Just like Rabbi Yossi says over there in the 5th Mishnah, in the 2nd parak of Shabbos, that it's like making a kli to the extent that you're making such a big tikkun, it's chayiv on Shabbos. Chayiv, mamish chayiv. Not just asur midrabanan. Chayiv means asur midaraisa. Okay. Now after all of that, let's see what Rashi says. Perhaps I'm right, perhaps I'm wrong, I don't know.
So it's making it clear over here.
That's what I would think. But I would think this kli I might have been more inclined to make. This to me would be the progression in the Mishnah. I can't do the first thing because even if I'm making a kli for the sake of lighting a candle, it's too many steps removed. Once I finish the cup, then I have to put in the shemen, I put in the wick, too many steps removed. But the wick, I would have thought, is very close to the actual lighting of the candle. It's much closer, not as far removed. So maybe you're allowed. No, not even that. Still considered too removed. It's not the actual lighting of the candle. It's preparing that which will light the candle. That would be my pshat before I see the Rashi. Maybe Rashi will tell me I'm completely talking rubbish. Should I read the Rashi or just decide that I'm right?
You can read the Rashi.
Put some sense on it.
Read the Rashi, right? Maybe I'm wrong. It would be very nice to see that I'm wrong, right?
Why?
No, then it means that I might have been, thinking straight, but, in the end of the day, it's good to know the truth. Okay, why says Rashi? Who's reading the Rashi? Pechamim. We saw the real word pecham in the Mishnah in Shabbos. This is just the plural.
We don't make charcoal.
Right. Inhu. Oh, there you go. Rashi says
These are kli. This is a kli.
These are also a kli. Meaning, I would have thought maybe this isn't called making a kli. Rashi says the chiddush here is that the first case, I'm just taking a glob of clay and making it into a kli. That's for sure making a kli. I said that's the chiddush as well, but if you accept that chiddush.
The Torah is already a kli, right?
This was already a kli. I'm making it work a tiny bit better. It'll light a little bit more quickly. No. What's the proof that this is a kli? This is called making a kli. Rabbi Yossi and Shabbos. Because Rabbi Yossi says, if you do that, you're chayiv. Right? You don't make someone chayiv on nothing. So Rashi said, this is also called making a kli.
Let's say the proof comes from Rabbi Yossi and Shabbos.
I think so. But Rashi doesn't mention it, so perhaps Rashi feels either doesn't need to speak it out, or maybe there's better ways of thinking about it. Let's see how Rashi finishes. Let's keep going. But that's the first Kiddush in Rashi. This is also a kli. It's not as much of a making of a kli as taking a glob of clay and mamish hollowing it out. It's much more refined or subtle, right? But Rashi says, in the end of the day, that's the Kiddush, that this is also called making a kli. So it's the same exact halacha, but just a bigger Kiddush of that, because I wouldn't have known this is called making a kli. Why? They are. He just said the word they twice. They are also a kli, they are. Inhu nami kli ninhu. Inhu and ninu are the same word.
Okay. Litzorfei zahav.
To people who
burn gold.
No, it's not just burning gold. We call it refining gold. Refining gold. Right? I don't exactly know what they do there to refine the gold. I know certain things they put it in a cauldron and then they fire up the cauldron. But I guess they do something singeing in the process. Yeah.
Petila nami kli.
Oh. The patila is also called a kli.
The wick.
A wick is also called a kli. I didn't make the wick, but I perfected the wick. Right? That's what we said in Shabbos.
Right.
So once I know that it's a kli, and Rashi says, what's it used for? It is a kli.
Okay. Lahadlika.
And its purpose is lahadlaka.
To light.
Right? To cause something to light. Tzricha. Asiya. V'tikun. It needs a making and a perfection, like a repairing. So in other words, it is a tikkun, right? It is a tikkun. I made a tikkun. So Rabbi Yossi's Kiddush is that's even deraisa. Although if you look in the Mishnah there in Shabbos, the Tanakhama certainly said it was chayiv. Just Rabbi Yossi agreed on that one. It seems like everybody agrees that making that tikkun is chayiv. In any event, we're not talking about Shabbos, we're talking about Yom Tov, and there would have been a havamina perhaps that I'm doing it for the sake of lighting a candle, which is for sure mutter. All I'm doing is getting it ready to light. And that's not called making an entire kli, but Rashi says, yes, this is also called making a kli, because you're perfecting the pasila, which is a kli, and this is called an asiya v'tikun. That seems to be what Rashi's saying. Alright, so we have two halachas in the Mishnah, which are very similar in that respect. Don't make a kli, even in situations that you wouldn't have been aware that you're called making a kli. I was just taking a piece of clay and, hollowing it out, so that's called making a kli. No. It's making it. I'm just taking a wick and singeing it a bit so it should light much more quickly. No, it's called making a kli. Okay? So it's not because we want to say he's chayiv. We're not saying necessarily chayiv like on Shabbos, but it is asr, right? Ein osim. We don't do it. And the third halacha in the Mishnah.
Rashi.
No, last one in the Mishnah. We just saw the Rashi. We're not allowed to. Right? The
wick.
I assume it means to take a long wick and cut a bunch of smaller wicks to, supply myself with as many wicks as I need. Right? So each one is probably the same measurement. And I make them all uniform. I think that's okay, but in any event, I'm taking one long, this is maybe a bigger kiddush, I'm taking one long wick. I'm not doing anything more to the wick. I'm not making it a better wick or anything. I'm just cutting it down to size.
Making it a wiki.
Wikipedia. Yeah. So apparently this is also, because before that I wouldn't put a huge long wick in my candle. Can't use that. Although, by the way, they used to do that with the menorah in the Beitsa Mikdash, right? They wanted to be able to light with the Ner Maravi, so they'd make it longer so it could actually reach the other ones, I think. In any event, so we're not allowed to do that. Apparently it's also called making a kli. Let's see, is there any Rashi on that? No. Okay, so that's the Tanna Kama's opinion. Last opinion in the Mishnah. Ur.
Cut off the means you can.
We're allowed to cut it.
For the what?
Be.
Or.
What's the base of that word?
In.
No, there's another translation. Bimem madlikin. What is the translation of the base in Bimem madlikin? With what? Right? With what materials are we allowed to light a fire on Erev Shabbos, and what materials are we not allowed to use? So here I'm allowed to cut it Be-ur. What am I using to cut it?
A knife.
With Be-ur. Ur. What's Ur? Ur Kazdim. You know what Ur Kazdim means?
Because it was the name of a city.
But it's nicknamed that in the Chumash because of an event which occurred there. What happened to our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather there? Avram Avinu.
Got thrown into the fire.
He jumped in to the Kivshana Eish. Ur Kazdim. Ur.
Fire.
Fire, light. Right? Or is light. Ur is the fire that creates the light.
You cut the thing with fire, right?
He says, Rabbi Yehuda says. Right? Because you don't have to take a knife or a scissors to cut a wick. You could just put it over another candle, and lo and behold, I didn't cut it, the flame cut it. Right? So maybe it's a shinui, maybe because it's a shinui, or maybe that's not called cutting. Right? They're on the cutting edge of technology here. So Rashi says...
Or you can cut it with a flame.
That's okay.
No, Shabbatai, come on, this is your job.
So the Gemora Mefresh.
Right.
The Gemora explains my shana or me sikin.
Sakin.
To light.
No.
To fire.
My shana. What's my shana?
My shana. What's the difference?
That's right. What's the difference of these two things? Ur, which he just said you can use to cut the wick.
Fire.
From, what's the difference between that and the sakin?
Oh, right, the knife.
That he's admitting you can't use a knife. The Tanna Kama said you can't cut, which normally means with a knife. Remember we talked about cutting with a knife before?
Yes.
Remember Rabbi Nechemi didn't want me to cut with a knife?
Yeah, why?
Because it wasn't its normal usage?
Yeah.
Okay? So probably wouldn't let us use it for cutting the wick either, because it's not the normal usage.